It was in 1900 the first motor car was imported to New South Wales, followed quickly by motor buses. Over the following 10 years, the state's first privately operated bus service started at Manly, and the first regional area was between Inverell and Glen Innes. Sydney's 1917 rail and tram strike highlighted buses' value, but it wasn't until the end of World War I the next year that routes and bus numbers increased. The Roaring Twenties was a boom period for buses statewide. Soon, buses were taking revenue share from government trams, so in 1926, the government planned ways to stop buses competing with the state-run rail and tram services. The decade also saw dramatic improvements in bus design, from solid tyres to pneumatics, from box-like wooden bodies to saloon coaches. Bus operations didn't escape the Great Depression, not helped by the restrictive transport legislation in 1931. It imposed a harsh tax on bus services competing with government transport.
My father and his brother bought the business in 1930. They were both 10-pound poms who came out here and went jackarooing and were looking for a business, and they had a fairly heavy Welsh background, and obviously came across this bus service and bought it and had 3 buses. But certainly remembering the early days was tough going. There was a lot of hard work to be done. The old diesel buses that wouldn't start in the cold mornings and had to be squirted with ether and all the rest of the stuff that went on.
The upheaval of World War II meant dire shortages of skilled labour, new buses, tyres, parts and fuel. In 1942, the Omnibus Proprietors Association formed. Then, when peace returned, there was a surge in patronage, and so the increased use of double-deck and semi-trailer buses. Rising costs like the 40-hour week and a government push for conductors on all buses with 15 or more passengers put something of a brake on the industry, but tourism started to boom.
The industry today bears no resemblance to what it was then. We're very much a cottage industry. In many respects, we're regarded by government as being second-class citizens. I'll use that term. It was a struggle, and we're predominantly in the western and northwestern parts of Sydney, where there was a lot of growth, and it was difficult to service that growth. When you're on unlimited budgets and so forth, you had to put everything back into the fleet.
Not just a boom in tourism, but of course babies. Immigration too, both helping the spread of suburbia in the 1950s, meaning increasing bus services and fleets. 1951 saw the start of driver-only operation on private buses and the first underfloor vehicles. Issues arose with school transport payments and administration, but high car ownership and the start of television in 1956 made inroads in bus patronage. Then, in 1959, the government extended its services over private routes, prompting the association to take legal action. In the 60s, car ownership rose further, congesting streets and slowing down buses. The decade saw the last conductors on private buses, but also saw Sydney regionalise as shopping complexes changed people's shopping habits and private suburban routes had to reorganise.
The big difference, of course, was that we were always being compared politically with the inner city state transit operation, and they were well funded, and they also had access to government subsidies. The passengers had access to the pensioner excursion ticket, and it took years and years of lobbying to try and get that to be available to the passengers on the private bus services.
The government introduced the first free travel scheme for school students in 1965, and by decade's end, the market for charters was developing. Throughout the 70s, small operations disappeared as the industry consolidated.
Back in the early days, I got a list of 86 operators that run buses in the metropolitan city area. Now there'd be about 5 or 6.
The 80s heralded uncertainty in the private bus industry and ever-increasing cost pressures. The first articulated bus with a private operator entered service in 1980, the same year the Urban Transit Authority was established.
The BCO went through some interesting periods when I was president, which was the introduction of what we called the Black Book, private buses at the crossroads, which we produced with the help of Roger Graham, who was a genius in that area, and helped put together a précis which we thought highlighted the problems that the private bus industry was having and was going to have. And we were just laughing down down the hall talking about the day we presented the book to the then Minister for Transport, Barry Unsworth, and the hysterics that accompanied his receiving the book. But we think it highlighted a lot of the problems we were facing.
In the late 50s and into the 60s, we had to go to the local police station every month and obtain a permit to operate for the next month. So our tenure was only for 1 month.
One of the greatest changes, the Passenger Transport Act 1990, which recognised the private bus industry and replaced the restrictive legislation of 1931. Issues around wheelchair access arose from the Disability Discrimination Act, but it was cutbacks to the school student travel scheme in 1996 that hurt financially. The Sydney Olympics meant a Herculean transport task over 3 weeks.
One of those periods that you'll never forget. Everybody was excited about doing the job, and nobody got sick, nobody wanted to get sick. It was just a fabulous time in Sydney.
Later in the decade, industry consolidation continued while overseas transport organisations increased their presence. Recommendations from the Unsworth inquiry were implemented, seeing the contract regime restructured and Sydney divided into 15 regions.
Operators had to join services within contracted areas, which proved very difficult in the first part, and operators had to really get in together and unite to maintain their areas and their contracts.
The trend to larger fleets and fewer operators continued.
The challenge of the future is different to the past. The past has been about regulation, legislation. The future, I think, will be different. The future is about the change will be technology. We have to adapt to new technology.
My name's Darryl Mellish. I'm the Executive Director for Bus New South Wales. I feel really honoured to be the Executive Director on this occasion for the 75th anniversary. I've been fortunate to be able to see some of the research that's been prepared for this event, and I really want to congratulate and thank the members, past and present, for achieving what they have for the industry and the community.
The future looks bright. The Bus and Coach Association is in a strong and healthy position to take the industry forward to face the challenges of the 21st century.